It's the 1996 US Open, and an unknown driving range pro from West Texas could do the impossible. Playing the final hole in the final group on Sunday, Rory McIlroy has a chance to win the US Open.
One swing, Roy.
Needing a birdie to win and a par to tie, he and his caddy stare down the second shot into the reachable par 5 and they ponder a simple question. Should he go for the green or should he lay up short? Now, I'm well aware that the plot of Tin Cup isn't actually real life, but at its core is a real world decision that affects every golfer, from amateurs to pros, pretty much all the time. It's a decision that comes on par 5s and par 4s and sometimes even par 3s. It's a decision that can win or lose golf tournaments, that changes careers and costs millions of dollars. With a high stakes decision in front of you, the question is, should you be aggressive or should you play safe? Should you go for the green or should you lay up short? With a binary yes or no decision right in front of you, what's the right move? What is the game plan? Los Angeles Country Club, the site of the 2023 US Open, was designed by a guy called George Thomas. Thomas was the master of the short par 4, in the words of Gil Hans, who oversaw LACC's redesign. It gives you a ton of options, Hans says of LACC's 6th hole. It's a brilliant design, perfectly situated into the landscape, and archaeologically, it's one of the greatest finds we've ever had in a redesign of a golf hole. LACC's par 4 6th hole maxes out at just 335 yards. It's downhill too, which means it can play shorter than some of the course's par 3s. Lots of pros could get to the green with a 3-wood, and surely their pride will tempt them into trying. But that's how the hole plays on paper. In reality, it's not an easy or straightforward decision. Even though it's a short hole, it really makes players think. The 6th hole's green is the smallest on the golf course. When you measure directly across the middle of the green, which is the angle players get when they take dead aim, it's just 11 yards wide. An interesting wrinkle here is that there's also a well-placed tree blocking the view of the green from the tee, which means the green isn't just incredibly narrow when you choose to go for it, it's also a totally blind shot. In a situation like this, even the best players in the world aren't going to drive their ball onto this green very often. They'll end up close, sure, but off the green. And on narrow greens, being off the green usually means being short-sided. Even though pros are usually terrified of missing on the short side, to understand why, check out our last video in the description below, they're generally willing to break that rule on reachable par 4s like this. Ultimately, it just comes down to a matter of risk versus reward. Let's say the pin on LACC's 6th hole is tucked over here on the left side of the green. The best case scenario is obviously just hitting a great shot somewhere onto the green so they can have a makeable eagle putt. The next best case scenario is leaving yourself with a stress-free chip or a long putt, one that you can have a good chance of getting up and down for birdie. After that is leaving themselves short-sided. Pros don't want this to happen because usually it's a chip that's hard to get up and down. But even if they don't get this shot up and down, they're still making par because they're there in 1 and it's a short par 4. And then there's laying up. Traditionally, this is what most players used to do on holes like this, and it does make sense why. LACC's 6th green is tilted, similar to Augusta National's 12th green, which means the effective width of the green changes the wider an angle you take into it. Whereas the middle of the green is about 11 yards wide when you go directly from the tee box, when you approach it from the side, that narrow corridor almost doubles to 22 yards. This is what people mean when they talk about working an angle into a green. The higher and the wider you go on this hole, the more green you have to work with. You may be asking yourself, so why don't more players just lay up and work an angle, take that extra space they get on the greens? Because thanks to the rise of advanced analytics in golf, players have realized that they were better off just being closer to the hole, even if it meant leaving themselves short-sided occasionally. The reason why can be explained by proximity stats. From 20 to 50 yards around the greens, pros generally hit their shot between 9 and 12 feet away from the hole. lay further back, let's say to between 75 and 100 yards, and pros hit their ball to almost 20 feet. When you look at the make rate of the subsequent putts, pros make putts between 10 and 15 feet about 30% of the time. That's about 12% more than putts they make between 15 and 20 feet. Simply put, the closer golfers are to the hole, the closer they hit their next shot, and the odds are higher that they make the putt too. This is true for all golfers, by the way, even high handicaps. It's why, over the years, players choose the aggressive route more and more on holes like this. You see it on Riviera's 10th hole, the similarly designed drivable par 4 just down the road from LACC, that was also designed by George Thomas. Back in 2004, 64% of players laid up on that hole and worked an angle into the green. In 2022, only 3% of golfers did, and the whole scoring average went down because of it. You also see it on Augusta National's short par 4 third hole. Even when players know they won't hit the green, the reward of getting their ball as close to the green as possible is just worth the risk of being short-sided occasionally. This is the strategy that won Collin Morikawa his first major championship. Leading by 1 on the tee of TPC Harding Park's reachable par 4 16th hole, he could have played safe. But instead, Morikawa stayed aggressive. He pulled driver, and his eagle won him the 2020 PGA Championship.
For the most part, in my career so far, I've gone for them. I've taken the 3 woods, I've taken the drivers, and just played with what I've got, whether it's a hazard, bunker, short-sided. You just play with that because for the most part, hopefully you have a shot at the worst to play to the middle of the green, make your par, and get out of there.
Of course, that's not what happened to Tin Cup when he decided to go for it. His arch nemesis laid up and made a boring par and lost. Tin Cup decided to go for it, and he hit a really great shot. He just got unlucky, and then sort of lost his mind there for a little bit.
I'm playing it from right here, now.
Tin Cup did get the girl though, and he was the hero of the story. There's a lesson in there somewhere. Maybe it's that going for it is usually the right call statistically. It won't always work, but there's glory in being brave enough to try.